we're going to try something a little bit different. Basically, I'm going to try my best to give you a little bit of a normal lesson through video. There's a few bits I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to type some things into a document. There'll be times I ask you to pause me to give you some time to think about the question I've been posing to you. And there are also going to be a few bits where I ask you to make a few notes on paper. So if you haven't already, can you get some paper? Ideally lined, but if you can only find plain, that's fine. Or maybe an old exercise book, that'd work. And ideally 2 different colour pens. I've got black and purple here. If you haven't got those things with you now, can you just hit pause and come back when you've got them? Brilliant, right. So the first thing I need you to do for the lesson is, just like you would in any other lesson, I'd like you to complete the starter quiz. So if you take a look here on the screen, you'll see you've got 12 different things taken from your knowledge organiser. I'd like you to read all of them, and I'd like you to write who you think they're talking about, what, where, or when are they talking about. Do this, please, on your scrap paper. Pause the video now while you complete this task. Brilliant. Now that you've hopefully had a go at every one of those questions, let's go through the answers. So number 1 is a definition of a burh, the centre of an Anglo-Saxon shire. 2 is the Danelaw, the part of northern England that wanted a Viking king, spoke Scandinavian languages for many people, and followed even many old Viking lords. 3 is the first of the battles you learnt about last week, the Battle of Gate Fulford. 4 is the Potsdam Conference, one of the key events where the Grand Alliance started to fall apart, because Truman was starting to argue with Stalin, and if you remember, Truman tried to bully Stalin with the atomic bomb. 5 is the definition of the Grand Alliance. 6 is 1946, the year after the Potsdam Conference and the year after the end of World War II. 6 is 7 is William Harvey, the man who challenged Galen's ideas and proved that blood was pumped around the body by the heart. The way to remember that is Harvey Hart. 8 is Thomas Sydenham, the man who told physicians to observe patients during the Renaissance. 9 is Andreas Vesalius. He used dissections to find out how the body actually worked, and again, he was a man who proved Galen wrong over 300 times. 10 is a description of the Munich Putsch, the event in 1923 where Hitler first tried to take power in Germany through force. 11 is the Bamberg Conference, the conference where Hitler unified the Nazi Party behind him and his right-wing nationalist values, giving him full control over the Nazi organisation. And 12 is Landsberg Prison. It's where Hitler was imprisoned after the failed Munich Putsch. It's where he wrote Mein Kampf and decided that from that point on the Nazis would try to get power using politics like a typical party and move away from violence. Though you'll remember they didn't give up violence completely. Now that you've completed that starter quiz and you've checked in on some old ideas, what I'm now going to ask you to do, or what I'm now going to introduce, is this topic of the lesson. So today we're going to look at who will win against William of Normandy and Harold Godwinson in October 1066. Now I know a few of the Year 10 classes may have already looked at this topic in lesson, but even if you have, I'd still like you to complete this work today because it's important that you consolidate it, and we'll move on to next week, the next part of the story. Now the first thing I'd like you to do is write down anything you already know about this inquiry question. Now I would like you to write this information directly into the Word document attached to Google Classroom. So if you look in your Google Classroom Lesson 1, you'll see this document here, which I've got up on my screen. At the top, you've got the lesson inquiry. You've got what do you already know. And I'd like you to write in this box here, where it says write your answer, anything you already know about the inquiry question. So can you write anything you know about William of Normandy, anything you know about Harold Godwinson and anything you know which might give you some information about who's going to win in a battle between them both. Can you write that directly into the Word document now? Please pause this video now while you fill in that box. Brilliant. Excellent. Now what I'd like you to do is compare what you've written in your What Do You Already Know box with a few of these ideas I put together this morning. So the things you've already learned about in lessons which are relevant to this question. Oh, pardon me, I've just pressed the wrong key. Yeah, if you look on your screen now, you should see the things you've already learned. Here we go. So, you've already learned that Harold Godwinson's Anglo-Saxon men would have been tired at this point from fighting the Vikings in the north of England, first at the Battle of Gate Fulford, then led by Harold Godwinson himself at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. You've also learned that in order to take part in that battle, Harold's men had marched around 300 kilometres north, so therefore they'd likely be very tired. You've also learned that Harold Godwinson would have had some advantages. He was an experienced leader of the Anglo-Saxon feud from his time as Edward the Confessor's subregulus. Harold was also very experienced from his time as an English earl, so he would know the landscape of anywhere he was fighting William of Normandy very well. And finally, the people of England would have wanted their king, Harold Godwinson, to stay as king, so they'd more likely support Harold Godwinson and oppose an invasion from the Normans. So Harold would likely have the support of the surrounding people. Again, can you now pause this video and add to your What Do You Already Know, ideally in green, anything you've missed from this list? Excellent. So what we're going to learn about now are those actual events. Who would win and why would they win when they faced off against one another? Now the way this is going to work is if you take a look at the screen now, I'm showing you your document again. What I'm going to do is give you some information. I'm going to tell you part of the story. As I'm telling you part of the story, I would like you to write notes here. So in this box number 1, what happened before, I'd like you to write notes on the story I'm telling you. Then, after that, I will pause and I'll let you make a prediction about what you think will happen next. I'd like you to write in this box what you think will happen next. After that, I will then tell you what really happened, and again, I would like you to take notes in the third box across where it says what really happened. Step by step, we're going to do this. We're going to do it 6 times in total, bit by bit, teaching you the story of the battle we're looking at today. Now, it might be easier if you can play this video with me now on maybe a tablet or on your phone separately. Then on your computer, you can keep the Word document open to type directly into to submit at the end. Okay, so let's start at the start of the story. Can you be getting your cursor ready to take notes in box number 1, what happened before? So, at the start of the battle we're looking at, and if you take a look here at the map on the screen, and give me one moment because I've managed to press the wrong button again. Okay, and if you take a look at the screen, I'm going to try and point to a few different things using my mouse. So, as you might remember, at the start of September in 1066, Harold decided to disband the southern feud. He had kept his army along that southern coast throughout the whole summer, some say the largest feud that had ever been seen, and throughout that summer all those men had to eat food from the surrounding areas and find places to live there. Now he had to disband that feud because he was no longer able to keep the men supplied on the southern coast. It was at this point, after disbanding and separating the feud, that Harold Hardrada landed in the north. As you learned, his men sailed up the Humber River. They first defeated the Anglo-Saxons at the Battle of Gate Fulford. They then marched north, when Harold Godwinson and his men then defeated the Vikings' Harold Hardrada, killed the king, killed Harold Godwinson's brother Tostig Godwinson at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Now it was after this Battle of Stamford Bridge, where King Harold Godwinson had been successful, that William lands in the south. The winds over the Channel have changed. And while King Harold Godwinson and his feud were in the north, William lands just where Harold Godwinson thought he was going to. He lands on the southern coast. Now Harold Godwinson marches from the north of England with his Anglo-Saxon army and arrives in London. Now London, a little bit like today, was a rather large settlement. And it was a secure place to stay because it had strong fortified walls. It was a really good place to stay and easily be safe and be defended well from an outside attacker like William of Normandy. Now my question for you now is, what do you think Harold Godwinson's going to do next? Because Harold Godwinson hears the news that William of Normandy is committing atrocities in his old earldom of Wessex. He's burning down farmland, he's destroying people's homes, he's killing people, he's attacking the Anglo-Saxon people in Wessex who Harold Godwinson used to be the Earl of. So I'd now like you to write, in the middle box of the first row, what do you think King Harold Godwinson is going to do? Will he march south, leaving London, take his army with him to Wessex? Will he stay in London, behind those fortified walls? Would he ask his earls, Edward and Morcar, to fight William while he stays in London? Or will he go back where he came from and march north to safety? I'd like you to now pause this video here and in the middle column write, what do you think Harold Godwinson is going to do next? Pause the video now. Brilliant. Right, what I'd now like you to do is in the third column, what really happened, can you now type in directly to that box your notes of what really happened? And Harold Godwinson decides to leave the walls of London and march his army south to Wessex, where he can fight William of Normandy's men directly. Partially he does this because he wants to protect the people of Wessex, who were being really, really hurt by those atrocities. He also has the pride, where he wants to defend his country from a foreign invader. Right, we're now going to move down one row, so we're on the second row now. I'm going to give you some information about the two armies who are going to face each other. Now the first thing I'm going to tell you about is William of Normandy's army. Now he has invaded England with a strong fighting force. First of all, he has with him 800 knights. Please make sure you're taking notes about this in that second row box now. Now his 800 knights were known as cavalry. Now cavalry are knights mounted on horses. And it's thought that this is the first time so many cavalrymen, 800 of them, had been taken across the sea at once. Now cavalrymen were incredibly effective fighters, and you can see a photograph of one here on the screen. They were incredibly effective because being on horseback gave them a height advantage, and it was much easier to fight soldiers you were above because when you're swinging, it's a lot easier for you to hit them and a lot harder for them to hit you swinging upwards. The cavalrymen also had years of training, so they were very experienced and they knew how to fight with horseback. They were also riding specially bred horses. Now these horses were very, very strong. They were also very, very quick and would make it really easy for the Norman soldiers to chase men running away from them. Now his full army weren't only cavalrymen. He also had with him crossbowmen, who could fire crossbows over quite a long distance. He also had with him men carrying what was called a gonfanon. A gonfanon. Now you can see in the picture, this cavalryman is holding a spear with a flag on it. Now that flag was used, because it could be seen at quite a distance, to pass messages across the men during the battle. Now this was really, really helpful for the Norman soldiers, because it meant that if tactics changed during the fighting, that message could be spread across all the soldiers really easily through those flags. Now the Norman soldiers also had with them what we call a prefabricated castle, which is a little bit like a pop-up castle. It could be constructed really, really quickly, and it would allow him to have a place to defend himself in the case of a battle. And in total, alongside those 800 knights, the Normans also had around 4,000 to 6,000 foot soldiers. Now, many of these foot soldiers were mercenaries, meaning they weren't fighting for William because they loved him, they weren't fighting for William because they believed in him or were loyal to him, but they were fighting for William because he had promised to pay them. He had said if the mercenaries helped him to win, he would make them very, very rich. Finally, William of Normandy's men also were carrying what we call the papal banner. This was a special flag given to him by the Pope, which showed him that the Pope supported William's claim to the throne. The Pope said that William of Normandy was the rightful king. So William and his men, going into this invasion, thought they had the legitimacy and support of the Pope. I'm now going to tell you about Harold Godwinson's army, his Anglo-Saxon fyrd. Can you take notes about this in the second box across where it says Harold's army? Now Harold, as shown by the Battle of Stamford Bridge, had a very disciplined army. They carried shields which they could really effectively use to form a shield wall, which would be incredibly hard to break through. They also carried very heavy axes. Now when a fyrdsman was able to swing that axe fully, he'd even be strong enough to decapitate horses. 6,000 and 7,000 men. This included the general fyrd, it included thegns, and it also included Harold Godwinson's housecarls. Now these men would be very, very experienced in the area, though many of them, being part of the normal fyrd, were not professional fighters. Also, they had the limitation that their men, as we've already mentioned, would have been very tired from the long march north, 300 kilometres to Stamford Bridge. They were tired from the battle, and they were very tired that they then had to march south again. Now in the third box, I'd like you to write, in your opinion, at this point, who has the strongest army and why? Please pause the video now and write your answer in that third box. Pause the video now. Okay, right. Now I'm not actually going to tell you the right answer to this question because the story will make clear who has the strongest army. So straight from here, I'd like you to move down one row, back to the first column, because we're going to now learn about the start of the battle. Now, Harold Godwinson and his fyrd, King Harold, had hoped to get the element of surprise. They had hoped to catch William not ready to fight, much like they had done to Harold Hardrada and the Vikings at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. However, King Harold Godwinson and the fyrd failed to get the element of surprise. William's Norman army had scouts and outriders who managed to see the Anglo-Saxon fyrd coming. They then gave William of Normandy the message that they were going to be under attack. So both sides were ready, prepared to fight. Now, Harold Godwinson started by using very similar tactics as had worked at Stamford Bridge. He told his men to create a shield wall, and he positioned his shield wall on Caldbeck Hill. Now, he did it at the top of Caldbeck Hill because, again, it would give his Anglo-Saxon soldiers a height advantage. The Normans would have to run uphill to fight against Harold Godwinson. William arrived at the base of Caldbeck Hill on the 14th of October, and this was the start of the Battle of Hastings, named after the settlement not far from Caldbeck Hill. Now, my next challenge for you, I'd like you to write this again in the what you think will happen next column, is what do you think Duke William of Normandy will do at this point? Will he wait at the bottom of Caldbeck Hill and wait for Harold Godwinson to come to him? Will William of Normandy charge up Caldbeck Hill at the shield wall of Harold Godwinson? Will William of Normandy decide this isn't the right place to fight and retreat to one of his prefabricated castles and safety? Or will William of Normandy use his archers and crossbowmen to attack from the bottom of Caldbeck Hill up to the top where the shield wall is? Please pause the video now and type directly into the document what you think will happen next and why. Pause the video now. Fantastic. Right, let's see what really happened next. William decided to charge up Caldbeck Hill. He started by sending his cavalrymen. Now, he'd hoped those soldiers, those knights, on their horses would be able to sprint at great speed and charge through the Anglo-Saxon shield wall. However, this didn't work. The hill, Caldbeck Hill, was much too steep, so when his men charged, they failed to get through. They couldn't get to full speed. Then the foot soldiers marched up the hill and they started to fight against the Anglo-Saxons in a more traditional style battle. Can you now move down to the next row? Because there's another challenge for William. Now, because the cavalrymen had failed, the battle seemed to be working best for the Anglo-Saxons. Caldbeck Hill had given them the height advantage, the shield wall was remaining strong, and it seemed like the Anglo-Saxons were going to win. And this is known as being a battle that lasted up to 6 hours, which is really, really long for a battle at this time, and it shows the two sides were fighting very, very powerfully and in a very, very committed way. Now, during this fighting, when it looked like the Anglo-Saxons might win, a rumour started to spread that William had been killed in battle. Now, this would have been really bad for the Norman army, because if the Normans thought that Duke William had died, the Normans would stop fighting for him, and it would allow King Harold Godwinson to win. So William, Duke of Normandy, has to do something to stop the spread of this rumour that might mean he loses a battle. So what do you think William of Normandy would do to counteract this rumour? Would he risk his life by removing his helmet during the battle to prove he's still alive? Will he use this opportunity to run away to safety because it looks like the Anglo-Saxons are going to win? Or will he decide that the best thing he can do is to just keep fighting as he can't waste any time? Please pause the video now and type into the second box across, what will William do next and why do you think that's what he'll do? Pause the video now. Excellent. Now, what William really decided to do, and please remember to take notes about this in the third column across, is he decided to risk his life in removing his helmet. He did this because he thought it would inspire his men. So he removed his helmet and he started on horseback to ride up and down around the Normans, proving that he was still alive. When the men saw this, it motivated and inspired them to keep fighting harder, and it meant the Normans could continue in the battle. Right, now move down to the next row. I'm going to tell you about the next part of the story. You should now be on box number 5. So can you type this next bit of the information into box number 5? Now, after removing his helmet, William sees that something is going to have to change. They've not been able to break through the shield wall, the cavalry have not been affected on Coldbeck Hill, and he decides to try something a little bit unusual. William of Normandy actually tells his men, especially his cavalry, to turn around and run away. The Norman horses and cavalrymen and knights run off down Coldbeck Hill. Now I've got a slightly different question for you this time. This time I'd like you to write down in the second box across, what do you think Harold Godwinson and the Fjord will do next? Will Harold Godwinson and the Fjord hold the shield wall and start to celebrate victory because the Normans have run away, so clearly the Anglo-Saxons have won? Will King Harold Godwinson and the Fjord send the army to chase the running away cavalrymen? Will he try and kill any Norman survivors who are running away? Will the Anglo-Saxons use archers to fire on the fleeing knights as they run away? Or will the Anglo-Saxons use this opportunity to return to London back behind the fortified walls? Can you now pause this video and write what you think will happen next, and remember to focus on why you think that will happen next. Pause the video. Brilliant. Okay, can you move over to the final column? I'm going to tell you what really happened. Harold Godwinson, or King Harold Godwinson, sent his men to chase the Normans as they run away. This was typical in battles at the time. As your enemy ran away, you took the opportunity to chase them, try and kill as many of them as you could so they couldn't come back and challenge you again in the future. However, this was a trick. William and his men were not really running away. What they were doing is lowering the shield wall to leave the top of Coldbeck Hill. And when Harold Godwinson sent his men to chase the Normans, this was a huge mistake. Because that strong shield wall that had been holding together so well, as it chased the men down the hill, started to break up. And as it broke up, the Norman cavalrymen turned around. And then, on their horses at full speed, they directly attacked the gaps in the Anglo-Saxon shield wall. That disciplined shield wall had failed. They'd fallen for the trick of Duke William's feigned retreat. It was a really effective tactic and a really effective bit of leadership from William, Duke of Normandy. Okay, can you move down now to the final row? I've got one more challenge for you. So, the Normans are charging up Coldbeck Hill. They're killing the Anglo-Saxon army. King Harold is probably now fighting alongside his brothers Gurth and Leofwine, the two other earls in England. And as they were fighting at the top of the hill, they are now outnumbered by the Normans, who are slaughtering the Anglo-Saxon Fjord. The Anglo-Saxon Fjord will have circled King Harold Godwinson, trying to defend him to the last. And at this point, William, Duke of Normandy, has a decision. Will he use this opportunity to negotiate a peace treaty with King Harold? Maybe allow King Harold a role in the Anglo-Saxon government, but make William, Duke of Normandy, the true King of England? Will William of Normandy choose to kill King Harold and all of his men? Or will William, Duke of Normandy, decide to arrest King Harold, hold him hostage so the Anglo-Saxons will follow his orders, much like Harald Hardrada tried to do before the Battle of Stamford Bridge? Or will William, Duke of Normandy, arrest King Harold and banish him from Anglo-Saxon England, forcing him to go live somewhere else in Europe as an exile? In the final middle column, can you please now type, what do you think William of Duke of Normandy will do next and why? Pause the video now. Excellent. Now, final box, here's how the Battle of Hastings came to an end. Now, there are lots of different reports. We don't know for certain exactly how it came to an end, but some we know for certain that King Harold Godwinson, his housecarls and his brothers were killed. Some stories say that the Normans managed to break through that defensive fjord circle, that they managed to cut down Harold Godwinson, chop him to pieces. Some reports say that a Norman archer was able to hit King Harold in the eye with an arrow, killing him instantly. Like I say, we don't know for certain, but we do know that the Normans were victorious. King Harold Godwinson and the Anglo-Saxon fjord were defeated. The Normans won the Battle of Hastings. Excellent. Thank you very much for taking part and listening closely to that. Now what I'd like you to do is just summarise that story all together in a few different questions. You'll see in the document step 3. Summarise the events of the Battle of Hastings in your own words. Tell the story of what happened. In the box below, where it currently says, write your answers here, I would like you to write out the full story of the Battle of Hastings from start to finish. I've given you lots of keywords there. Now they must be included in your answer. What I'd like you to do is to delete them and make them bold in your story so your teacher can see that you've used them. This might take 2, 3, maybe 4 paragraphs, but make sure you get the full story in that summary. If you can't remember part of it, maybe rewind this video or maybe go back to the table and read it. Once you've done that summary, I would then like you to follow the task underneath, which says, list all the different reasons why William of Normandy won the Battle of Hastings. And in that box below, make a list of reasons why you think William of Normandy won. Finally, once you've done that, there is a stretch task underneath for those of you who are really wanting to stretch your understanding, where I've included, you'll see, the links to some stretch readings, which I've just clicked here to show you what it looks like. So by clicking that, you'll see a PDF document with a more in-depth, detailed retelling of that story, which you can read through to find out more about the Battle of Hastings. There is another reading from a different book about the Norman Conquest. There are then 2 videos underneath, which include documentary. Now, if you're doing those stretch tasks, that's fantastic. I'd like you to really show off the extra things you've learned. Can you fill in this box the new things I have learned from the stretch readings? Type straight into that box anything you've learned from that I haven't just taught you in this lesson. Your teachers will then be checking this document in the next couple of days to see what you've got right and what you've got wrong, so we can replan future sessions based on that. Thank you so much for listening closely to this lesson and for filling in all of that document. Now that you've completed it, please remember to go back into Google Classroom and click Hand In. By clicking Hand In, your teacher will be able to see what you've done. If you don't click that, it won't look like you've completed the work. Brilliant. I hope you found this useful. If you've got any ideas or you think I've missed anything in how this works, Please don't hesitate to drop me an email directly, and the next time I prepare one of these lessons, I'll make those adjustments to try and help you. Now go click hand in, enjoy the rest of your day. If you've got a garden, go sit outside. Maybe print off one of those readings if you've got a printer and enjoy it in the sun, but make sure you get some fresh air. It's really important while we're home that we're not just cooped up indoors. So now that you've done some productive work, excellent, go take a break. And I'll speak to you again in a day or two when I prepare your next lesson.